From profits to prison. This is the fall of Megan Media Berhad. Stay with us as we reveal how one's company fraud changed everything. So today, me and my friend will present to you about the fraud case of Megan Media.
Today, we will presenting a real-life corporate scandal involving Megan Media Berhad. The purpose of this presentation is to understand how financial mismanagement and weak internal control can lead to serious consequences in the corporate world. We will walk you through the company background, legal aspects, growth versus fraud, internal and external failures, and the last one is accounting lesson. Now, we will look at the company background and chronology of the accounting scandals. Now, let's begin by understanding who Megan Media Berhad is. The company was established in 1994 and is based in Petaling Jaya, Selangor. It was founded by several prominent individuals including Tan Sri Datuk Muhammad Yusuf bin Abdul Rahman, Tan Sri Datuk Dr. Haji Abdullah bin Abdul Rahman, and Mr. Yomi Siong. In its early days, the company operated as an investment holding business. But over time, it transitioned into the manufacturing sector with a focus on producing optical storage media. Megan Media Berhad also expanded its reach through its subsidiaries such as Memory Tech Sendirian Berhad and MJC based in Singapore. Interestingly, despite its promising growth, the company's financial reporting was audited by one of the top firms, KPMG, which makes the later development in the story even more significant. The company was incorporated in 1999 and began growing steadily. By 2003, it had expanded its production to 7.5 million discs per month and even had plans to increase that to 20.5 million, which showed bold ambition. However, in the following years, signs of trouble started to appear. In 2006, there was a failure to submit the audit financial report, which raised concerns about transparency. The situation worsened in 2007 when Bursa Malaysia suspended the company from trading. Not long after, it was revealed that the company had reported false revenue figures exceeding 300 million. This eventually led to its official delisting from Bursa Malaysia in 2008. This timeline helps us to understand how a company that appeared successful on the surface was actually facing serious internal issues.
Next, the legal aspects. This part focuses on what is the violated laws and the court outcomes. It helps us understand how the legal system deals with corporate wrongdoing and the consequences faced by those who break the laws.
Now, let's look at the legal violation involved in the Megan Media scandal. The primary legislation violated was Section 122B of the Securities Industry Act 1983. This law makes it a criminal offence to furnish a false or misleading statement to Bursa Malaysia, which is our national stock exchange. That is exactly what happened in this case. The Securities Commission, Malaysia, filed charge against two senior individuals in the company, which is Datuk Dr. Haji Muhammad Adam Cik Harun, who was the executive chairman of Megan Media Holdings Berhad and also the former financial controller. Datuk Dr. Muhammad Adam was charged for furnishing a false revenue figure of 306 million ringgit in the company's financial report for the quarter ending 31st January 2007. This wasn't a minor accounting error. It was a serious case of financial manipulation. The revenue figure was based on fake invoices and non-existent transactions. This leads us to the second key point, which is this act severely undermines the integrity and transparency of the financial markets. Investors and stakeholders depend on honest and accurate financial information to make decisions. When false data is submitted, it destroys trust and puts the whole market at risk. And according to the Section 122 subsection 1 of the same Act, responsibility is attributed to the highest ranking officers of the company. Directors and top management are presumed to be accountable unless they can prove they were unaware and took all necessary steps to prevent the misconduct. In this case, the court found out that Dr. Muhammad Adam not only knew about the false report, but personally approved and instructed it to be submitted. As a result, he was convicted and sentenced.
Now, it's turned to the court outcomes. So, for the outcomes of the legal proceedings involving Datuk Dr. Haji Muhammad Adam Cik Harun, the former executive chairman and the director of Megan Media Holdings Berhad. This case was related to the submission of false financial statements to Bursa Malaysia, specifically the financial report for the period ending 31st January 2007 falsely showed an inflated revenue of 306 million ringgit. This was a serious offence under the Securities Industry Act 1983. On 17 May 2017, the Session Court in Kuala Lumpur found him guilty. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison and a fine of 300,000 ringgit. If he failed to pay the fine, he would face an additional 1 year jail term. However, the court granted a stay of execution pending his appeal. Later on 21st June 2019, the case went to the High Court. While the High Court upheld the conviction and the 300,000 fine, it reduced the jail sentence from 18 months to 6 months. But that was not the end. The case then went to the Court of Appeal on 15 September 2020. The Court of Appeal made its final decision. The panel of judges decided to reinstate the original sentence. That means 18 months in prison and the 300,000 ringgit fine remain unchanged. So the judges emphasized that submitting false financial statements is a serious offense that affects the integrity of the capital market. They also said that even though the accused was elderly and not in good health, those reasons were not enough to reduce the sentence for such a major breach of trust.
So now, I want to bring your attention to a real-world corporate scandal that served as a powerful lesson in what can go wrong when governance and internal controls are neglected. The case of Megan Media Berhad is not just a story of financial misstatement, but it is also a breakdown of trust, responsibility, and accountability at every level of organizations. Once a respected name in the media and data storage industry, Megan Media Berhad fell apart due to weak internal controls and poor corporate governance. So, in this presentations, we will take a closer look at how this failure allows senior executives to manipulate financial records, evade oversight, and ultimately bring the company to its downfall. So this aim is not only to understand what happened, but it is also to recognize the warning sign and also prevent similar outcomes in the future. So firstly, weak internal controls. At Megan Media Berhad, weak internal control were a fundamental flaws that lead to large-scale financial misconduct. Internal control are systems and procedure meant to ensure the accuracy and reliability of financial reporting, compliance with law, and the protections of company assets. In this case, Megan Media lacked strong internal control over both financial reporting and inventory systems. Because these controls were not in place or properly enforced, senior management had the freedom to manipulate revenue and inventory figures without being caught. So the company's internal control environment was so weak that even when the fraudulent numbers were reported, such as the false revenue figures of RM 306.15 million in the quarterly report, no internal mechanism flags or challenged the data. So these consequences were so serious, the Securities Commercial Malaysia charged several directors with providing false information, proving a total breakdown of internal oversight. Despite the company recording over RM 1 billion in fictitious revenue and inventory, the internal audit department failed to detect or investigate these discrepancies, that highlighting how internal controls were not only weak but also essentially ineffective. So next is poor corporate governance. What is corporate governance? Corporate governance refers to how a company is directed and controlled, particularly through the roles of board of directors and key oversight committee like the audit committee. So in Megan Media Berhad, corporate governance failed completely. The board of directors and audit committee do not provide an effective oversight. Their lack of supervisions created an environment where unethical behaviors such as falsifications of financial data could happen without consequences. The presentation notes this as a clear example of poor corporate governance, where weak board oversight allows the manipulations of accounts to go unnoticed for an extended period. Additionally, the lack of segregation of duty works, the governance failure, which is the effective chairman and chief financial officer had unchecked authority over revenue reporting, financial recording, and oversight functions. Such concentrations of power without accountability make it easier for fraud to occur and harder to detect. For example, in this case, former CEO Knetscope and CFO Muhammad Adam were later charged with falsifying revenue figures, falsely over RM 1.03 billion from 2006 until 2007. So this demonstrates the consequences of poor governance, not only in terms of financial loss, but also in reputational damage and legal repercussions.
While internal mismanagement played a role, several forces outside the company also enabled the fraud to occur and escalate. The first one is weak regulatory enforcement. Even after Megan missed the deadline to submit its audited financial statements for the year ended 30 April 2007, regulatory bodies like Bursa Malaysia and the Securities Commission did not take any swift action. Enforcement only happened after repeated delays. This shows that regulatory mechanisms were too passive and failed to detect or respond to the warning signs in time. Why this is an external factor? Because it reflects a failure of the financial oversight system which exists outside the company but is responsible for protecting market integrity. This weak enforcement allowed the fraud to go unchecked longer than it should have. And last but not least, the factors that lead to this fraud is lack of proper due diligence by financial institutions. Megan Media Berhad subsidiary, which is MTSB, was able to borrow huge sums of money, for example RM 211 million supposedly for 13 production lines without banks detecting that the transactions were fake. Forensic reports later showed that MTSB used these loans to channel cash through fictitious creditors and debtors, creating a false appearance of revenue and repayment. So, this is an external factor because banks and lenders are external parties that provided funding with insufficient due diligence, essentially enabling the fraud by financing transactions that were never real. So, for the conclusion, these four factors all played an external enabling role in the Megan Media fraud. Together, they show how even companies with internal weakness can only commit large-scale fraud when external systems fail to provide the necessary checks and balances.
Next, I will highlight the most serious impacts of the Megan Media Berhad scandal, the failure of audit oversight, and how it led to a total breakdown in the integrity of financial reporting. In the case of Megan Media, external auditors failed to detect massive irregularities in the company's accounts, including fictitious deposit worth of RM 211 million, and a sudden loss of RM 1.3 billion after previously reporting a profit worth of RM 60 million the year before. This failure allowed the company to release false financial reports over multiple periods, misinforming regulators, investors, and the public. As a result, the entire financial reporting system lost credibility. When auditors are unable or unwilling to act independently and detect fraud, it signals a major breakdown in corporate governance. It also means that financial statements, which should reflect reality, become tools for deception. This case highlights a critical lesson, which auditors' accountability is not optional, it's essential. When audit functions fail, the entire foundation of financial reporting collapses. This scandal prompted calls for stricter audit regulations, more transparent corporate governance practices, and greater independence in audit professions. Ultimately, the failure of audit in this case reminds us that financial statements are only as trustworthy as the people who verify them.
To conclude our presentation on Megan Media Berhad, this scandal serves as a powerful reminder of the consequence of poor governance, weak internal controls, and unethical leadership. With over 300 million in false revenue and 1.3 billion ringgit in hidden loss, the company's downfall not only led to delisting and financial ruin, but also shattered investor confidence in public trust in the financial system. And the legal repercussions were serious, like executives were prosecuted under Section 122B of Securities Industry Act 1983, with the former executive chairman sentenced to 18 months in jail and fined 300,000 ringgit. Yet, the broader damage reached beyond legal penalties, affecting the stakeholders at every level. So, what can we truly learn from the Megan Media scandal? It highlights the urgent need for stronger regulatory oversight, tighter due diligence by financial institutions, mandatory audit rotation to avoid complacency, and firm accountability for directors and auditors. This case is not just a cautionary tale, it's a wake-up call. As future accountants and business leaders, we must view such scandals not as a distant event, but as critical lessons that shape how we uphold ethics, transparency, and trust in the profession. Let us carry forward these lessons and commit to building a financial ecosystem that prioritizes integrity above all. So, I think that's all from our group presentation. Thank you for listening, and thank you.